indeed the fourth pillar of our democracy is a healthy media ecosystem that exercises rightly its freedom of expression. Again, integral to that is a state-financed public media.
So Mark Miller, everyone's favorite Voldemort impersonator, Mark Miller decided he was going to take a trip to the UK. What did he want to learn from the UK? You may ask. Well, if there's one thing that the UK is doing better than just about anybody else other than North Korea and China right now, it's controlling what people can and cannot say on the internet. So let's take a look. From Blacklock's reporter, study social cohesion plan. They dropped this on Thursday, August 13th.
Heritage Minister Mark Miller, on a July junket to the United Kingdom, scheduled confidential briefings on a Labour Party proposal to promote quote-unquote social cohesion, according to an Access to Information memo. A Labour report targeted individuals it called, quote, digital grifters, end quote, and, quote, politicians of grievance. The United Kingdom's Secretary of State for Housing recently released an action plan protecting what matters towards a more confident, cohesive, and resilient United Kingdom to strengthen social cohesion and tackle hate and discrimination, end quote, said the memo. The United Kingdom was, quote, an important partner to online safety, end quote, it said. Miller was in Glasgow to attend the July 23rd Commonwealth Games. The memo, Ministers' Visit to the United Kingdom and Ireland in July, said additional meetings were scheduled, including discussion of the quote-unquote action plan. Labour's April 28th plan proposed quote-unquote new tools to combat conduct deemed divisive. Quote, we will develop new tools and powers to disrupt organizations that spread extremism, hate, and threaten public safety, end quote, it said. Quote, we will not tolerate efforts of individuals to sow division, stir anger against those with religious, political, or social views different to theirs, or spread extremist, intolerant beliefs that undermine our shared values, end quote, said Protecting What Matters. The report added, quote, we can and must do more. In a world where so many people, digital grifters, hostile states, politicians of grievance, have a vested interest in division, we need to be much more active in asserting British values, end quote. Minister Miller has repeatedly identified quote-unquote social cohesion as a federal issue. He was asked to identify the term in testimony last February 12th at the Commons Heritage Committee. Quote, what is social cohesion, end quote, asked Conservative MP Rachel Thomas for Lethbridge, Alberta. Quote, social cohesion is the ability for people to trust their institutions, to not feel like society is falling apart, that we are all living together and able to exercise the rights in the case of Canada that define us, end quote, replied Miller.
So let's take a look at this exchange between Rachel Thomas and Mark Miller. Now, this happened way back in February of this year. It's amazing because it doesn't feel like it's that long ago, but it was 6 months ago. So this is that exchange. And now knowing that C-34 came out, because C-34 wasn't announced then, and that he decided to take this trip to go and visit the UK, it's a little bit interesting hearing this.
My first question for you is, you recently made a statement after becoming minister that part of the responsibility of CBC is to foster what you called, quote, social cohesion. Can you explain for the committee what you meant by social cohesion? The reason I ask is because experienced journalists have stated that these words, this term, is often used by the People's Republic of China to mean state control and zero tolerance for challenges. That seems counter to the values that we hold here in Canada, and so I'm curious as to what you meant by social cohesion.
I think in an age that we're all living through of intense disinformation, there is less social cohesion as falsities are propagated through media sources, both legitimate and illegitimate, integral to a healthy democracy. Indeed, the fourth pillar of our democracy is a healthy media ecosystem that exercises rightly its freedom of expression. Again, integral to that is a state-financed public media that is the CBC or Radio-Canada, not state-controlled. Indeed, the CBC's mandate is one that is ferociously independent, and we should all defend that, whether they're saying good or bad things about us. So when there is a lack of support for a public broadcaster, I think that contributes to the spread of disinformation, and social cohesion is therefore affected. It's not about any sort of command and control of the media system that you may see in other countries, but indeed in part of an integral to a healthy democracy.
So what is social cohesion?
Social cohesion is the ability for people to trust their institutions, to not feel like society is falling apart, that we are all living together and able to exercise the rights, in the case of Canada, that define us, freedom as enshrined in the Charter of Rights. I mean, I could go on beyond the time allotted for you to discuss this, Ms. Thomas, but I think we both agree as to what it is.
Well, I think that the committee needed to hear from your mouth what it was. And one of the things that you said in your statement was that it's a trust in institutions and that Canadians should be able to place their trust in the media. And in particular, you mentioned the public broadcaster, the CBC.
So I think this is fascinating that Mark Miller says that core to the ability to have trust in institutions is we need a state-funded broadcaster. State-financed broadcaster. When I said state-funded broadcaster, the CBC feed cut. Oh, shucks. But
I
guess I misspoke. State-financed broadcaster. And it goes on to say, ferociously independent is their mandate. And then he goes on to say, when that broadcaster isn't supported, that causes this sort of disinformation. So it's funny because he says, in his mind, well, the problem is that people just aren't supporting the CBC. We fund the CBC, they put out information, and people just aren't supporting them. And because they're not supporting them, there's all this misinformation out there. He doesn't seem to mention that people don't trust not only the government, but people don't trust the CBC.
But I think to a degree, I'm not agreeing with him entirely, but to a degree, what he is saying, I think can be correct because, with us, who holds us to account? You guys, right? So if we get something wrong, if we're putting out clickbait garbage, you guys are going to stop watching, and that's holding us to account. But with the CBC and like Global and CTV, etc., they have regulating bodies that oversee them.
But who are the regulating bodies controlled by?
The government.
Right.
But my point is more that, like, you could argue that, well, Northern Perspective doesn't have anybody making sure that their stuff is accurate versus, like, mainstream media who has these overarching bodies.
Well, and this is true. But this is where we have to be very, very careful. And we will get to that because this is very, very core to what we're talking about. Now, as we always do, we go down every rabbit hole that we find. And Blacklock's mentioned a specific report from the UK. So we went and found that report. So, a lot of people have talked to us, are you seeing what's happening in the UK? Are you following what's happening in the UK? And we say, no, because it's international. Well, this is one of those cases where that creeps into Canadian federal politics, and now we're actually going to take a look at it. So, ladies and gentlemen, check this out. So, this is a policy paper. Protecting what matters towards a more confident, cohesive, and resilient United Kingdom. So this isn't the beginning of it. We're only going to show you a couple sections of it because this is a very, very long paper. We're going to show you some of the key parts. So this was basically on behalf of the Prime Minister.
This call to action recommits Britain to that quiet act of defiance against the forces of division and renews our approach to social cohesion. As ever, we draw deeply on our shared values, not just our core liberal principles such as tolerance, protection for minorities, the rule of law, or the freedom to live and let live, nor just the natural pluralism that has always characterized an island country containing our 4 distinct and proud nations. We also draw on the distinctively British approach to integration that has always been grounded in the fairness of the two-way street, in rights and responsibilities. And we draw on our pragmatic, common sense decency, which means that people who come here to contribute can become not just citizens, but our friends and neighbors. That, bound by our common good, they become part of the greater us. But we can and must do more. In a world where so many people, digital grifters, hostile states, politicians of grievance, have vested an interest in division, we need to be much more active in asserting British values and the responsibilities of integration. We must be stronger when it comes to rooting out extremism and rejecting the passive tolerance that sometimes prefers to look the other way. And we must be clear that patriotic pride is something to be embraced as a force for good in our communities. That it is, by its nature, a collective act of community building that is totally opposed to exclusion and those who seek to divide us. Because ultimately, this is the only way we can sustainably strengthen society. That is the challenge this action plan takes on. And in doing so, it shows a new path for a united, proud, confident, and cohesive Britain.
So here are some of the main points of their action plan. So, number 1, let me know if any of this sounds familiar, folks. Make use of robust powers to require platforms to mitigate risks related to their algorithms. Explore options to improve government understanding of division and hate online. Give people greater control over what they are exposed to online and reduce accidental exposure to hateful content. Take further steps to increase transparency about how online platforms operate and how they comply with the Act. Give independent researchers access to platform data so they can help to build the evidence base to hold companies to account. Have launched a national consultation on further measures to prepare children for the future in the age of technological change. Publish media literacy action plan, deliver a pilot communications campaign, bring major streaming services into line with TV rules on harmful content. Work with the advertising industry and others to develop options for addressing harmful content monetization. So, we ask the question here, what separates a digital grifter from independent media? This is the dangerous question that needs to be asked, because we've talked about this before in these online acts. Who gets to define what harmful means? Who gets to define what hateful means? The problem is these are inherently subjective terms.
Right, and we didn't see the term digital grifter defined in this plan.
No, it just says they're digital grifters or politicians of grievance. This is where it comes back to what I was saying before. People can stand on the street and they can have a bunch of people listen to them. They may not, but, this isn't Monty Python. But you can stand there on the street and you can talk to people and try and build a rally. And, sometimes that happens down at, community centers like Dundas Square and stuff like that.
It's not called Dundas Square anymore.
Well, nobody knows what it's called anymore. So it's Dundas Square.
I can't remember, to be honest. Yeah.
So, but you have your right under Section 2B of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to actually do that. So for them to even consider this type of action plan in Canada, they're talking about infringing on our Charter of Rights and Freedoms when they're going after people for saying what they want. Is it bad that there's people online that are outright lying to Canadians and
Yeah.
profiting on it? Yeah,
100%.
sure.
We get very upset about it.
Now, is lying against the law?
No.
No, it is not. Is lying immoral? Yes, it is. People do lots of immoral things every day. Doesn't mean they're against the law. Are there people on the left that are lying to Canadians and profiting? Yes, there are. Are there people on the right that are lying to Canadians and profiting? Yes, there are.
There's people across the entire political spectrum.
Right.
So the only point in this entire thing that Ryan just read that I think is appropriate is media literacy. Teach citizens media literacy. And that's why we push the SIFT method, because it's a quick little tool that you can use to try to figure out, okay, is this information actually true, or did somebody make it up?
Now, there's also people on the left and the right that are not lying to Canadians, but maybe getting things wrong and still profiting off of it.
And that's misinformation because it was a mistake. You didn't mean to get
Right.
it wrong. And you know what? It happens every now and then here on Northern Perspective too. We say, the wrong day, the wrong court, the wrong person, like little mistakes, right? But it's still technically misinformation.
Now, is that against the law?
No.
Well, right now it's not. But
No. But we make every effort to correct it.
we also have to talk about this term that they use, divisive. Divisive isn't necessarily an immoral thing. Being divisive is sometimes a really good thing. Take a look at any sports team or any sports league that you have. You have inherently divisive things going on from all of the PR machines of both the league and all of these teams. That's a good thing. Or maybe it's a bad thing, but it's not against the law and it's not necessarily immoral. But they're trying to mix divisive within the context of law. And that is where things get dangerous.
Yeah. I
And-
mean, any topic can be divisive. You could have a bunch of people who like the color purple and a bunch of people who like the color green, and they're arguing about it. That's divisive,
And I think the term politicians of grievance is eerily similar to the framing that both the Liberal Party and people like Andrew Coyne are taking in terms of their stance on the Conservative Party, trying to say that criticizing the government is unpatriotic.
Right.
And that's a very dangerous path to be going down.
Absolutely. I mean, as citizens, we should be criticizing our government when they do something wrong. And, we encourage our audience often to write your MP if there's something that their party has done wrong or something you want to see done better. This is how democracy works. It's not going to be perfect. You can't just assume that the government in power is going to do absolutely everything perfectly. They're going to make mistakes too. And it's up to us, the citizens, to hold them accountable and call it out. Again, when you're writing letters, don't be nasty, don't swear, don't name call, and definitely don't threaten them. But you still have the right to criticize.
This was actually located earlier in this document. So now that you've heard all of that, I think it's rich that this was actually read earlier. So it says, many people feel as though they cannot air perfectly legitimate concerns about the change they are seeing in their local communities. There must always be space for honest discussion without assuming bad intentions or policing language. This is what they're saying in this memo in the UK, folks. Otherwise, these issues will continue to be exploited by those who do not want to see solutions but further division. Only through frank and constructive conversations can we form a basis for real common ground and respect across society. They're trying to say, well, we need to be, providing the avenue and the ability for people to have constructive and frank discussions. Well, here's the problem. If you try to define somebody that is criticizing the government as being divisive and therefore a digital grifter or a politician of grievance, that doesn't square with what you just said. And this is where the dangerous slippery slope lies. And this is where it's important for Mr. Mark Miller to define what social cohesion actually means. And in his first answer and his second answer, they talked about two completely different things. So I don't think we actually got an answer on that. But
No, I mean, if you ask me what social cohesion is, I would say that it's like a bunch of people in a country that accept a common civic framework. So, like our laws and even not necessarily laws, but things like when you go to your friend's house, you take your shoes off when you're inside. Like that, I'm told, is a very Canadian thing. And things like holding the door for the person behind you. Like these are just kind of like social norms, things that we do that kind of bring us together as a community. It's almost like expected, you know what I mean? And I honestly feel like a lot of this started falling apart when the Liberals came into power. And a big reason for it was because they started dividing people up into groups. Men versus women, you know, one religion versus another, the color of your skin, etc. And that's what divided us.
well, and I would define social cohesion is the participants of the designated community that is supposed to be cohesive are in joint agreement of the social contract between themselves as individuals and the contract with the group as a whole. Meaning, you're all rowing in the same direction, you all respect each other, but you also all respect each other's rights and freedoms. And to Tanya's point, this is what the Liberals broke. It's rich that the Liberals try and say that the Conservatives are the ones being divisive when you've been spending the last 11 years literally dividing people into groups and trying to make them angry at each other. That's what happens.
Yeah.
We didn't have this problem.
Under Harper. No.
We didn't have this problem under Chrétien.
No.
We didn't have this problem under Martin. We only had this problem when the Trudeau Liberals and now Mark Carney's Liberals came to power. This has been the issue. So they want to blame social cohesion on everybody else. You only have to look in the mirror as to see why.
Well, and no doubt they're blaming the internet for this, but
It's those darn kids. You know, that's...
no, well, I mean, if you're trapped in an echo chamber all the time, yes, it creates problems. But really, what's the root of that? It's a government that is, like I said, breaking people up into these groups and putting people in these boxes. You're not allowed to do this because of your race. You're not allowed to, or I should say that you have like a stricter sentence in court because of your race or your sex, like things like this.
And this is where the Liberals are dangerous, because they create a problem and then they manufacture a solution that has nothing to do with the root cause of the problem, but they try to manufacture it and present it as if they're doing something.
Yeah.
And this is what Bill C-34 is. It is a very dangerous bill talking about enacting a digital safety commission, giving them court powers, allowing ministers to designate the power of the commission to anybody that they want, the power to enter your home, the power to take documents, the power to take your computer. And if you refuse them, you can be punished millions of dollars if you refuse to comply with the Digital Safety Commission. This is the real big concern. We have laws to handle just about everything that happens on the internet now.
Yeah.
We need to enforce those laws. And
Yep.
if we are having a problem enforcing those laws, then we need to address that.